Sir is the active member of many academic bodies of many countries. Some of the countries name I'll name here, like Japan, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and many more countries. Sir has guided PhD, many PhDs. Sir has published a good number of papers in different national and international journals. Sir has also presented papers in many seminars and conferences, many national and international seminars and conferences. In 2020, Sir was given the award, COVID Warrior Award, by Jadavpur Association of International Relations. We have many things to share, but the time is short. So I think without wasting time, I would like to invite our resource person of the day, of the first session, to talk on mission and challenges of higher education system. Sir, we are very grateful. I am very thankful personally, sir, that you are here, especially at this time. After the class, this is the time when you leave for home, and after many other things in the office, you leave for home. But you are here, and this is the benefit of online system, sir. So thank you once again for accepting our request, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, sir, all is yours.
Okay. First of all, I express my sincere thanks and gratitude to the MMTTC, Malaba Mission Teacher Training Center, Aligarh Muslim University. I'm especially grateful to the director of very eminent personalities, Professor Fajab Basi. I'm really grateful to Muhammad Sakish for his kind words. I don't know, do I qualify those words or not? And I'm really happy to welcome all the esteemed teachers or colleagues from various colleges and universities. And as you know, that this NEP orientation and sensitization program has been run by 116 MMTTC Center, which has actually earlier, we have 66 HRDCs. And then further, the government added more centers, especially after the introduction of new education policy, and all the centers have been renamed as Malaba Mission Teacher Training Center. In 5th September, it has been announced in 2023. And then government, especially the UGC and Ministry of Higher Education, they give us a mandate, all the centers, to carry on 2 programs in a month for NEP orientation and sensitization. And given that mandate, all the centers, including mine, we are running these courses. And Aligarh Muslim University has its own name in film and one of the premier institutes of our country, having a huge historical legacy. Now, having said so, now possibly you listened to already many lectures. Maybe in some cases it might be repetitive. You may say, you may find it, but just let me go wherever you find that it's getting repetitive. And you are all colleagues. You are very esteemed researchers, teachers, successful teachers. So I'm not here to teach you. Rather, this particular orientation and sensitization program has been conceived in a manner that the policy has been introduced by government by 2020. And then subsequently various states, they are introducing at different time period. And most of the states of India, they have now in a process of introducing this new education policy. And we understand that when a policy has been announced and introduced, and since education is in a concurrent list of constitutions, so every state government, they take their own specificities into considerations, and finally they introduced in respective states. And as a result, you find that the central universities or centrally funded institute, they are directly governed by the government of India or Ministry of Education. So they have immediately introduced it, but some of the state government, they took their time, they look at it objectively, and gradually they are in the process of introducing it. So therefore, there is a certain time lags exist so far the introduction of NEP is concerned. Now the question second, which is important, that why this orientation and sensitization programs, you have RCs, OPs, short-term programs, Guru Daksha, faculty induction programs, all those things, you are part of your career advancement, and you are already, many of you have completed, possibly you no longer recall that. But this particular program has been opened up for all segment of teachers and research scholars. So why is it so? The reason is very simple, that when a policy is introduced, and this policy doesn't have any regional specificities. So that, say for example, that for West Bengal policy would be like this, for Maharashtra the policy is not like that. And for any kind of government policy, a singular policy. Yesterday we had a budget, and the budget is for the one country. And maybe there is certain announcement for certain states, that is different altogether. But by and large, it is catering the requirement of the entire country. But we understand that India is a absolutely heterogeneous country. In every mile, India changes. That's the reality we know. Now, changes means you can find the changes in dress, you can find changes in the food habits, you can find changes in the culture, you can find changes in the festivals, you can find the changes in the way of life, you can find the changes of the religion or ethnicity. So it's absolutely diversified country, and it will continue to be so. So long the entire universe will exist, India possibly will exist as a most diversified country or most heterogeneous country. So therefore, when a single policy being announced, government is well aware of the fact that there are geographical specificity also, which I forget to mention. So there is certain geographical specificity too. Therefore, same policy, when it will be introduced in different institutions will be having sorry. So therefore, say for example, the same NP has been introduced in a college which is located in a rural areas. The same policy is being introduced in Delhi. The same policy has been introduced in Calcutta in premier institutions. The same policy might be introduced in an interior of UP or maybe Bihar. Though the policy is the same, but the process of introduction and type of problems a particular institution will confront will vary. It's bound to vary. It will certainly vary from one institution to other. Number one. Number two, once the policy being introduced, we will understand that in certain areas, certain uniformity would be there. But at the same time, there would be high degree of heterogeneity of the outcome will also be involved. Now, how to take care of that? How do we take care of that? How will we be able to know that? It's not that every institution will write, okay, we are having this problem, we are having that problem. No, possibly that is one of the ways. But another important way is that if throughout the year, 116 institute, roughly they're likely to reach to 15 lakhs teachers, along with the research scholars was not estimated, with a specific goal. And then the year-long process will help us to understand that where supplementary announcements are required. And as a consequence, you will see for any policy, subsequently many changes, many policy, further policy announcement, maybe it's not changing the broad structure of the policy, but some addition is taking place. Why does this addition take place? The addition takes place because the outcome and the process of interaction will vary from institution to institutions. That is why we need to discuss together. You are teachers, we are also teachers. So therefore, and we have a virtual platform where we'll be discussing the different aspects of new education policy, and through interaction, through dialogue, through interrogation, would be able to understand maybe a gross or a macro picture will emerge from a very micro level. So precisely that's the ideal objective. This is the first point. The second point, which is equally important, I need to address at the very beginning, is that what prompted the government to come out with the education policy. We had, this is the third policy in the post-independent India, that why government feel a requirement to come out with a policy in a black and white. There are three major perspectives involved, and we need to these three perspectives to address the issues, to implement the ADP, or while implementing these three perspectives will be taken care of, or we have to take care of rather. And these are broad perspective. Now, what is the first perspective? Let me come into that. And all higher education institute, irrespective of all kinds of higher education institute, they are aware of this perspective. The first one is the major changes in the economic policy that took place in 1991. That we resort to economic reforms. I am not going to tell about the economic reforms. Instead of telling the major areas that I need to deal with, that is mission and challenges of our education system. I'll come to those points and I will try to unravel my own way. And you have every right to interject, intervene, amend, comment, observe, giving your observation. You are absolutely always free, because no way I claim that I have a better understanding and knowledge in comparison to you. Only thing that I will share my thought, and you will integrate your thought, so that a collective thought can emerge in this platform. Now, having said so, the first perspective that I would like to bring in here is the new introductions of the new economic policy, or economic reforms rather, in 1991. Now, what kind of changes it brought? You know that new economic policy or economic reforms is actually, we moved away till late 1980s, the policy, the structure that India followed, that's some kind of insulation that we maintained, economic insulation, and we are not that integrated to the global economic forces. But in 1991, we opened up our economy. Now, we opened up our economy means very precisely we are getting more closely linked with economically, with different economic activities, be it trade, commerce, etc., with the global system. That means our economic system getting tuned with the dominant economic system, where the so-called political boundaries that we talk about, that getting blurred, that got blurred. This is point number one from that perspective. The second and important thing that happened in 1991 and onwards, because we have 1991 and 2004, it's a huge time, almost more than 3 decades, we are into economic reforms. So the role of the government changed. Prior to that, government was solely into production, government was solely into distribution. everything almost owned by the government. That scenario changed. Government gradually withdrawn from the production system. So you may ask that how is it related to educations and new education policy, and that institutions need to think of, yes, I need to integrate it, otherwise it would be a hollow statement. Now, having said so, what are the major changes? We observed that the government sector gradually got reduced. The space that's been created when government gradually withdrawn has been paved away for the private players within the country and from other parts of the globe. And we gradually got integrated. This is the first point. The second important aspect that's important, that when the economic structure changes, will the society remain insulated? The answer would certainly be no. The society will gradually getting tuned with this changing economic structure, and we find that if you consider a life in the 80s or 70s, the way of life rather, it underwent a change, and gradual changes we are observing from 1991 and 2024, what is happening in US or Germany or China, or for that matter, any of the European countries, the repercussion is instant. So that was not there, that's not the case. This is point number two. That means we are become part of the global changes, and the global changes has direct ramification and implications on our country, on our populace also. That doesn't mean, if I say so, that okay, we become just like US or we become Germany. It's not like that. But the connectivity, proximity, interaction, exchanges all got weakened, and gradually the speed increased, or we are getting momentum. So this is the second. The third and important aspect, which is very important, that when we're talking that the society is also gradually changing, then one of the important component of the society is education. Can you think a society without education? No, we cannot think. Now, if it is education, then if you take from the pre-primary level to the tertiary level, that is post-graduation and research. So that will also come under the changes. So therefore, when NEP 2020 is being announced, it not necessarily so, or it not the case that our education system didn't see any changes prior to that. Yes, if you look at what is simple example you take, we have a 2+1 system in India undergraduate level. Then we got into 1+1 system. Then we got into 1+1+1 system, that was 3-year degree courses. And then we have a semester system, sorry, choice-based credit system. And then we have your semester system that got introduced. And finally, if you take the choice-based credit system, and if you look at the NEP, the horizon got expanded. For who? For the students. And where do the students belong? Student is part of the society. Where do the institution belong? Institution is the part of society. So if you take this particular issue, then these changes are already taking place. And why these changes have been brought in? These changes have been brought in because there is certain paradigm shift also took place. Now, what is that paradigm shift? that if you look the colonial period and post-colonial period, we are mostly following the colonial structure, which is being the Maculas minutes. And the purpose of Maculas minutes, I'm not going to reiterate that. So post-independent India, more or less, the British education system that has got, which was being introduced in the colonial period, we find structurally the continuation of that. And the post-1991 scenario, we realized that if we have to follow the Western education, it's not that the influence of Western education system is not that from there, it's mostly driven by the Western education system. But the structure of the education is more like the structure that is followed by the US. So that structure become more like a dominant structure across the globe. So the post-reform period, economic reform period, we are gradually trying to bring uniformity with the global education system. So when we are trying to bring the parity with the global education system, one of the important issues is to the length of study. And that is why you find that in new education policy, the length of study is become almost similar. Otherwise, the experiences that we are having, that after completing masters, if you go directly want to do PhD in foreign universities, Western universities, rather you have to complete another 2 years of master courses, and gradually then you can go for the. So therefore, that gap gradually got eroded. So this is one of the major takeaway of new economic reform process and having influence on our new education policy, or rather the new education policy take that thing into cognizance. The third aspect, which is also an equally important, that when this reform got unfolded, so-called formal government jobs, which we are part of that still now, that bound to be reduced because government is gradually withdrawn from the production process. So where do the government job exist? Yes, certain laid down jobs would be there, but most of the jobs are not in the hand of the government. This is the one point. And the second point, the way entire global knowledge system changed over time. This change actually forced us to bring the changes in our education delivery mechanism. So this education delivery mechanism, which you may say that teaching, learning aid, and so on and so forth. So that also undergoing changes. Say, for example, if you remember our old days, we started with computer and our device, the data sources of floppy is being used to keep our data intact, or rather to additional data that we want to keep. And the size of a floppy, and I hope that maybe the floppy is got into the museum. And when you talk about your classrooms, maybe your ICT intervention is being reflected. Yes, we are using PPTs, PowerPoints, and maybe in some CDs, we are having some structured lecture. And then you find the intervention of the information and communication technology and the huge changes. It's almost a kind of we can say a watershed. The way entire ICT underwent a change very rapid change, and we reached to an era of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And even that also got into the our way of life. It become part of our way of life. It become one of the important components of the way of life. Now the moot point is that where the institutions have been put or how they have been visualized at the country level or India as a country, we realized that we can become not only part of global knowledge system, but we can also become a major stakeholder of global knowledge economy. So that the term knowledge economy become important in, say, for example, 2008, 9, 10 onwards. And we told that we can have a win-win situation if we can use this global knowledge economy, or we become a strong stakeholder of global knowledge economy. Now, what prompted us to think in that way? Couple of examples can be given. One of the important precursor of that is the population dividend that we talk about. Still now we are talking about the population dividend, because many a times we keep on writing essays and answers that okay, it is the high population growth and that is the major problem that India is confronting right up to independence for many years. Then the perception is slowly changing. We told that okay, see, we have a very huge young population, and contrary to that, the West is having either zero population growth, or many Western countries even having a negative population growth. And what is the outcome of that? The outcome is that they have a serious scarcity of workforce. There is a serious scarcity of young people. They are confronting the problem of aging. And how do the Western countries try to resolve it? They resolve it, first of all, in post 1991 era. You find that private sector has expanded in our country. At the same time, the huge demand has been created, the offshore appointment of highly skilled workforce. Now, who are those highly skilled workforce? This highly skilled workforce maybe, which we during that period of time, we call that sunrise industries or something like that, this computer sector, the IT sector. A large IT specialist, the early IT specialist, they mostly being hired by the Western countries to suffice their requirement. Now, how are they suffice? How are they sufficing their requirement? Because if there is a scarcity of young people or highly skilled people, and if they have to hire from their own country, they have to pay a huge amount. And the entire global south, which is containing two-thirds of the population, and the percentage of highly skilled or highly trained personnel is huge. And therefore, we find that IIMs, Indian Institute of Managements, the alumni of IITs, all the premier universities from our country, they were of a high demand. And government realized that this is a positive. This is a win-win situation for our country, because those people, even if they settled abroad, they will send remittances, what they have earned, because they are in comparison. If they work in India, even if it's beneficial for the West to engage them because they are getting at a lower cost, but certainly paying much higher in comparison to our country. So that have been paid off. The second, the West did that their production unit, they instead of carrying it their own countries, that they shifted the best to China, the Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, then maybe the other Southeast Asian countries, including India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Vietnam. You can say there are some footfall is always there. The differences are there. Possibly the China, Singapore, Taiwan, they did much better in comparison to us. That is different story altogether. But that is give us a positive trigger or signal to bring changes in our education system. So this is the third aspect, which is important or which is actually triggering or encourage the government to come out with this particular policy. The fourth aspect, and this is the last aspect, I can say, the broader perspective. I yet to get into the minor perspective. The major perspective I am talking you, the larger picture I am trying to draw for you. So the fourth perspective, we realized that the post-colonial India, there is a process of decolonization of every aspects of our country, and decolonization of education is also being thought of, or rather attempt has been made, and that actually allowed to the growth of various school of thoughts. For example, you may say Dalit studies, you may talk about the subaltern studies, you may say cultural studies, you may say the gender studies or women's studies. So just I'm bringing some references. You can say about creative writings and so many. These are actually an attempt to decolonize the education. Another aspect of decolonization of education is that the institutions, now more seriously, possibly they're thinking that, okay, the English become, because we are the British colony, so therefore, to date, even I am speaking, you delivering the lecture in English, it's become the part and parcel of our entire working process. Global. But if you look the worldwide, how many percentage of people they speak in English? Rather, Spanish is spoken more in West. If you look at our country, the Persian language, or the Farsi, or the Arabic, or the Sanskrit, these are the also a very rich tradition and culture, which being relegated to a certain extent. So therefore, to revamp that is one of the process of decolonization of the education. Maybe one of the component is there in the new education policy. We look from that perspective also. Now, taking this all this perspective together, the new education policy has been introduced. So if you have any doubt, if you have any your own observation, whatever I say till now, you are absolutely free. Please do share your views. All are absolutely welcome. So, esteemed teachers, so you are absolutely free to give your own opinion. So you don't want to maybe it's like fag end of the day, and that too also such a screeching from my end may not be that palatable to you. Nevertheless, then let's continue. So this is the perspective that we are confronting. And that is why these 8 major parameters have been laid down or maybe being included in the while formulating the new education policy. Another aspect is important and need to be told, need to be shared with you. And we are all experiencing that. This post-independent India and Indian Constitution guaranteed. It's a concept of welfare state. So education not only put in the concurrent list, but the education has been considered as a public good and merit good. Now, what do you mean by public good? Any one of you have any idea? Please, you can share. Any one of you? Now, public good is having 2 attributes. One is called non-excludability, number 1, and number 2 is that non-rivalryness. So non-excludability means no one would be excluded from getting education at any level, be it primary level to the tertiary level. And it is also being loaded with the basic concept of inclusive education. And therefore, one of the parameters, possibly any of the resource person already discussed or will likely to discuss, the student diversity and inclusive education. So the nature of public good. And that is why the government aided or government funded institute, maybe it might be funded by the state government or it might be funded by the central government, but mostly the school education system, right from the primary to tertiary level, is the major dominant part was government funded or aided institutions. So therein, the tuition fees that we paid as a student, it's really, really meager. And it's so meager that our parents, they don't find it difficult neither to ensure our admission or to take care of our higher studies. With a very least cost, duly mostly supported by the government, we are outcome of that. And from where do the government get the money? Is that every Indian taxpayers, they contributed to the government through taxes. And that was actually being spent to run the different, all kind of government aided institutions, school education and then higher education. And that's the case for almost every state. We cannot deny that. That means if I have to owe my gratitude, if I have to owe my success, whatever be, it's the people of India. For them, all of us, because our fathers are not that affluent to send us, spent a huge money of that. The majority of the Indians belong to that particular category, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, and so on and so forth. Now, the next important issue that is emerging out of that in post-1991 scenario or before that, the school education system, the private educators, the private schools, they gradually creating the footfall started increasing and expanding, and gradually in the entire school education system will observe that the private education system really flourished. And what is the trigger behind? Because it would be your kids would be taught in English. So the English medium schools and the private schools, they become synonymous. And we realized that, okay, this language will have some premium in the job market. And in post 1991 scenario, the job market got extended beyond the country also. That is one of the prime trigger of having a strong presence of very prestigious private schools, along with missionary schools, which were there even long before the colonial period. But the college education and the universities, there's a very little presence, minuscule presence were observed. The first we have observed that in South India, the engineering, private engineering colleges, long back. And that time, yeah, oh, how is it possible? And that time our parents used to say, hey, the people who are having money, even the less qualified students, they can also become engineer. It's as if it is a matter of, it's not that prestigious. But gradually, what you have observed, the premier institute, privately funded, be it the technical institute, be it the medical institute, be it the law colleges, be it the B.Ed colleges, be it the business schools, be it the formal degree giving universities, they start flourishing. And it's also, again, I need to reiterate that it is the outcome of the economic reform process that India initiated. So new education policy didn't stop the door or close the door. Rather, they have opened up that, okay, the foreign universities also, they will come and join. But the binary has been created. Now, what is this binary? The binary is, on the one hand, government-funded schools where midday meals and everything is there, are almost students are getting uniforms, textbook free of cost, and some other support system. But they are mostly vernacular school. And contrary to that, you find the private schools, it's well understood, because there's nothing new or nothing novel I'm talking before you. But the commodifications of the education, that on the one hand, there is a public good, on the other hand, there is a education as a commodity, the simultaneous existence of both kind of goods, that's become a reality. Within this reality, the new education policy has been introduced. That means if we adopted a very cutthroat competition in economic system, efficiency and competitiveness, that become the guiding force for the economy, then gradually within the education system also, this competitiveness has increased and a level playing field is likely to be created or will emerge. And therefore, all the publicly funded institute, government funded institute has to compete with the private players within the country and from other countries also. Whether that is good, bad, I'm not going for value judgment. Rather, I'm talking the reality. So therefore, new education policy is actually giving paved the way to increase the efficiency and competitiveness of the existing institutions. That is another major perspective within the framework of higher education system, or which we call higher education ecosystem. Now, having said so, after drawing this particular picture, how do you define an institution? So, very naive question I will ask before you. How will you define an institution? Maybe you can think that you need to integrate your society, your institutions, and whatever the parameters you can think of. Just you think for a moment. You won't have to be take into considerations the 8 parameters of the new education policy, that academic leadership, governance, management, holistic and multidisciplinary educations, higher education and society, Indian knowledge system, information and communication technology, research and development, skill development, student diversity, and inclusive education. So these are the 8 parameters. I'm not telling that to define an institution, you need to take these 8 parameters at this moment into consideration. Certainly we'll consider it. So maybe I can give you 2 minutes time, because you remain, rather you prefer to be silent. Possibly you might be tired, or maybe you have like your almost day end. You did your lot of works, take to classes or assignments or research and everything, and then you are attending. So I can understand that some degree of tiredness might creep in or may creep in. So please, you take 2 minutes break, think, maybe you can have a cup of tea in between. Within 2 minutes, I'll come back and I will carry on. Rather, I'll try to hear from you. Yes, so I hope that I didn't take more than 2 minutes, or if I exceed, so I will beg apology. Please tell me, how will you define an institution? So anyone having your own idea, you can share with me. So I hope that anyone will volunteer to give some reply. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So please, just it's simple. Just you need to have some interaction, Otherwise, it would be a monologue kind of things, which is not like which I don't want actually. Rather, I want to hear from you also, because uh, you are the various team teachers and spearheading the changes at your respective institution. Okay, let's take it up. Because still there is a time constraint. So I have been left with half an hour time. So let's continue. Now I will define in a very simple way. What I'll do, I'll draw a triangle. Now what kind of triangle? An equidistant triangle I will draw. You know what is equidistant triangle, no? That 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 if I take the 3 points, if I join, that the distance would be the same. That is called equidistant triangle. We did it at our very early school level. And generally, there are 3 points. When we draw a triangle, uh, we put A, B, C, or D, E, F, like we used to mark it. Now, just I'll change these markers. What I'll do, maybe the top point of a triangle, I'll make it, put it as a student. The second point of the triangle, I put it as a teacher. And the third point, we'll put it as the entire governance system. So they are like all kind of administration and non-teachers. They would be clubbed together. And if you, then you can, your institution is for you. So student, teachers, the administrators, as well as the non-teachers. So generally that structure, there are different kind of layers of administration as there. I'm not going into that nitty-gritty. Possibly that would be dealt with in different occasions by different resources. Now next, what I'm doing, I'm drawing a triangle, drawing a circle by touching these 3 points. Now what this circle will all about, what this circle will be called. I have already, the triangle is our institution, and I have draw a triangle, draw a circle by touching these 3 points. So what this cycle can be all about? Anyone? So this circle is nothing but the society. So therefore, the institution is actually encircled by the society, or institution is within the society. So without society, institution cannot be conceived, thought of, or cannot be taken care of. Now, I'll take you to different issue at this moment. You are passing through NAC accreditation process. And when you are looking at the NAC accreditation process, maybe whatever the methods now being applied. Earlier, there was a different method, your SSR or a QA, And now it's more become numeric in nature. 70% is almost numeric, 30% is subjective. And there is further changes are going to come in the accreditation process. And you have simultaneous the NIRF ranking, and its National Institution Ranking Framework. And gradually, we have global ranking framework. And certain preconditions have been laid down. The gradation system has been abolished. Now, no longer the gradation system will be there, but for a long period of time, we had a gradation system. We have been graded. And therein, if you look very closely, the parameters which are there in the new education policy, many of the parameters are already there. So if it is leadership and governance, it is there. You have student progression, student support system that was there. Then information and communication technology, research and development, student diversity has been measured in from different aspects. All those things were there in the NAC accreditation process. So that means whatever being told or written in the new education policy is not that those are not being thought of earlier. In NAC accreditation process, it is there. But the most important, one of the important aspect of this particular accreditation process, one is that how you are closely linked with the society. The two-way relationship of the society with a given philosophy that institution is by the society, of the society, and for the society. And that was a major challenge. Or rather, we try to create, diversify, add various components through which the interaction and integration with the society become much more robust. We have parent teachers association, we have alumni association, we have NSS, we have through NSS, we have our adopted village concept. We have a lot of collaborative activities with the society, some kind of outreach program from the society. So the linkages with the society is there. Or rather, we try to validate. Now, what is a new addition? A new addition, if we talk about within the realm of new education policy, is the multidisciplinary education, very precisely speaking. The Indian knowledge system is absolutely new inclusion in the education policy. The research and development has been redefined. It's not that the research and development was never be thought of, because there's a huge, especially for the universities, the weightage on the research was quite paramount, even for the college level also. And therein, the functional MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that is collaboration, maybe with other institutions, maybe with your public-private partnership, or maybe with your society. And a lot of innovative ideas, those who are there, were part of the system, part of the education system. Now it got reiterated, redefined, and the base got expanded. The question of multidisciplinarity and question of interdisciplinarity, if you thought of maybe last 5, 6, 7, 10 years, if you look at different kind of conferences and seminars, you will see that most of they have been interdisciplinary seminar or multidisciplinary seminar. So this kind of reorientation is there. Number two, and importantly, a lot of generic subjects have emerged, have been come into existence, especially at the university level, different kind of centers for studies. different kind of centers. So Center for Exclusion and Inclusion, then Center for Women's Studies, or the Center for Strategic Studies, and many more. And these are centers are mostly interdisciplinary in nature. So that was there. What is new? New is that even the choice-based credit system that is being introduced, we offered more choices before the students. But now the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinarity become not only part of the research, the collaboration is not only become the part of research, but at the same time, in new education policy, the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary curricula, development of that curricula is become prioritized. Now the question is why, how, how far? These are the three questions, three attributes would be added. Now, and what is the rationale behind that? The rationale behind that is simple. Say, for example, you might have of particular discipline, you have got the orientation, you have been trained, you have PhDs in particular subject, but at the same time, you have certain other attributes. Maybe you have good in painting, you might be good in singing, you might be any creative arena. You have some expertise, you have a very close affinity of sports, games, filmmaking, and many more. Now, all these were actually the co-curricular activities right from the school level to your completion of the PhD or even in the postdoctoral level. That means we remain discipline oriented. We remain subject or specific subject oriented. So as a consequence, a student of physics want to pursue his talent in music or his talent in photography, his talent in any other issues that were not part of the curriculum. So therefore, that has already been included. Now the question is that how far we can diversify and what are the problems that we can face. Now, if it is have to diversify, we can diversify. You may say the problems, the challenges is your physical structure, physical infrastructure. The problem is your number of teachers, especially for government aided and government supported institutions. It's not easy to get. There's certain procedure involved, unlike the private institutions. So therefore, a component has been added that, okay, you can hire the expertise. No, not necessarily the expert has to be from a successful industrialist. Not necessarily so all the time. It might be so. A folk singer can come and take a class on folk music. Maybe you have a course on folk and culture. Maybe the local artisans, they may come and teach you the craft that may be very rich in your region. And they can train the students, take classes on the students. Therefore, the another component that's being added within the institutional framework, higher education and institutional framework, that is the skill development. Now, the question is the skill development. What do we mean by skill development? It means that creating big entrepreneurs like Tatas or the Ambanis or the Godrej or the builders. We always, whenever we talk about the entrepreneurs, we always think in that line. Maybe that is one of the roots. They are one of the most successful people with their extreme degree of ability to take challenge. Yes, that is one small part actually. The bigger part is taught and practiced and have been shown successfully by none other than Rabindranath Tagore. During the colonial period, in Vishwabharati, there was another institution called Sriniketan. And what Tiger did there, he brought, it's precisely dominated by a tribal people, the area, the Santhal people. Now he brought the knowledge from the West regarding agriculture, regarding leather technology, the wooden crafts, and many more. And then he made nature as an integral part of the skilling process. And he used the concept of cooperative for the outlet of the commodities produced. Until today, if you go to Shantiniketan, you'll find that the roading business has been made and all our arts and crafts being created with art and aesthetics, which is blended with the Western idea of Renaissance and a very indigenous technique. The blend has been made. So when we talk about the skill development, maybe one successful model, there are many are there. I'm not going to get into detail of all those things. I made one example, successful example. Now, why this become part of the institutions or become a major challenges for the institutions to introduce it? Because you find that your students, the rate of dropout at the school level is very high. It's not, especially in the government schools, the girls' dropout rate is pretty high. Especially in the post-COVID scenario, the child labor, early marriage has increased in our country. And many of the dropped out, one of the prime reasons that what next? Even those who are coming and getting general degree, for them the question is looming large. What does government employment, when the exam will take place in competitive exam, what do I do after getting a graduate degree or postgraduate degree? And the reality is that the scope of this kind of government job is going to diminish and already it got reduced, is further to reduce. So therefore, the population dividend we are talking about, that require a certain degree of skill, and skill doesn't mean that it has to be artificial intelligence and machine learning or rocket science or nanotechnology all the time. It should be a very simple skill that can give us some kind of decent livelihood options before the student community. It might be beautician courses. It might be courses on videography. It might be the a content writer. It might be the editing. It might be the photography. It might be many other new kind of service related work that's been created in the changing global scenario. Even that share market trading, or that you don't require a very sophisticated knowledge. Rather, you require how to local resources, or maybe the local artisans, artifacts, the local traditional crops, everything. And you have geographical indicator and all are at disposal. So therefore, linking the local resources, local culture, local latent forces, having a high degree of young population, they may be given certain degree of skill, acquaintance with the skill, so that they have certain degree of livelihood options available before them. Even if there is so-called formal government job may not be available. If you take a very simple day-to-day experiences, if you call an electrician, if you call a person to keep a plumber, or if you call a carpenter, if you call, say, for example, TV mechanic or whatever are there, you find that some local people having no such formal institutional training, mostly they are doing it and then doing it successfully. So it's not necessarily so that they have to, they are part of any formal training institute. But if the formal institution can create of that kind of component and courses, maybe the short-term courses, maybe the 6 months courses, the certificate courses, having a first-hand experience to which we earlier called vocational education, that will create some kind of employability of the for the student fraternity. That also need to be thought of, because the given economic scenario, and if you closely follow the success story of China, though the China is a different uh, political regime, it's much more authoritative in nature, unlike the democratic country like India. But still, they follow and they made the agriculture robust, and then they go for this kind of MSMEs and skilling of the people at multiple. You have mobile, you just, if your mobile got not working, most of the cases now you are sending it to the companies, but you have a lot of local people available, they are doing some this and that and getting it corrected. Now, these are very much must be part of curriculum. And the reason is very simple. The reason is that we need to, certainly the critical thinking, liberal thinking ought to be nurtured. It must be nurtured. We cannot sacrifice that. Otherwise, the entire epistemology or quest for knowledge will become slowly redundant. So only it cannot be factory of knowledge. But at the same time, this is also very realistically thought of. And then might be in your regions, different cluster of small scale units are coming up. Say, for example, by using local resources, some kind of banking support, some kind of self-help groups, institutions are hardly get linked with that. So therefore, when we talk about the mission and challenges of our education institute, this is one of the challenges we need to take up. We must take up, because at the end of the day, the employability does matter for a student. We cannot create a disillusioned group of students, and we cannot allow them to be dropped out at the early stage. Maybe a very ambitious goal has been set up by government of India to have a gross enrollment ratio to 50 to 60% by 2030. And that is why this free entry exit system was created. The credit mobility has been created. That means credit bank. You can move from one particular institutions to other. You can come and exit and come back. So this flexibility will allow a lot of dropped out students to come into the system. But for that matter, and that is why once which was distance learning system gradually become open their distance learning systems. Now it's become MOOCs, Moodles, NPTEL, and that entire virtual platform of resource sharing, knowledge sharing that's being created can be tapped by every institution. You, all of you can develop a course on MOOCs. And the geographical barrier will be broken up slowly. Yes, it is very easy to say, but difficult to do. But these, so therefore, this is another area of challenge that the higher education institute we have to take, because there would be private institutions taking a very high cost. They'll make them trade. That will be there. Therefore, if we really have to survive in a changing scenario, because we also need to develop our survival strategy, we also need to develop a competitive strategy, we have to also develop an efficient strategy for our own institutions. And for that matter, there are two advantages of there. One is that the virtual platform where your lecture can be accessed by anyone from the part of any part of the globe. So therefore, the course you are offering can become one of the prominent course across the globe. The Western universities are successfully doing. Premier institutions in our country are also doing. Why we would not be able to? This is one way to think. The other way to think is that how I can integrate my own sub-regions where I am located, the people, the resource that is available here. So that linkages, if we can move in this two-dimensional way, in two directions. On the one hand, getting connected with the global knowledge system to the virtual platform and virtual repository system. On the other hand, linking it with the societal requirement, the changing economic structure. That is one of the major challenges, that we can accept it as a challenge, but we can create a successful examples. So, for example, that I was just discussing with one of the professors from one of the MBA colleges. I came to know from her that I was not in a management institute, so I do not have much knowledge about the successful entrepreneurs, starters, all those things which are being talked of nowadays and being maybe very successful. But the guy getting MBA realized that he's from Bihar, and people from Bihar, they are every parts of world rather, and every community have their own culinary, own taste, but they want to satisfy own traditional foods. They prefer, irrespective of the places they are staying. And that guy, what did he called Fuchka wala and Litti wala, something like that. He branded in that way. And he started creating the chain of business of Fuchkas and Littis. And he is become a very successful entrepreneur. Now it's the idea that matters. Possibly the resources are having. But this idea is completely, I am giving you a very simple example from own region. It's called, name is Top Tea. It's a tea shop. It's a very real example from my own area. And you get a very simple food, like you will get some gugnis, some toasts, and some very local dishes. But it's really, really tasteful. All are tasteful. And people, maybe you can spend 50 bucks. You get some kind of very general kind of foods having some degree of taste. And I find that maybe they are having 2-3 centers that created some kind of inquisitiveness in my mind. And they are even in a very big shopping mall, they have their outlet. And then I realized that person, whoever be, he must have created some amount of capital. And he's not selling all those stuffs which are like the brand, old brand. No, it's not like that. And then the person is working in a railway. And he got frequently transferred. And wherever he goes, He created that kind of outlet, maintaining the standard. And I'm telling you, I'm going to study this one. I am trying to meet this person. It's a passion for him. A quality tea, a quality bread and butters, toasts, the gugnis which we called, and some other things. But I don't know, but possibly even I missed many a times. I've been driven to that particular place. This is also entrepreneurship. We need to think. So therefore, we might think that new education policy, these are there, those are things are there, but certain changes in our approach, which had already been given, framework has been created. If we can think, look at our own region much closely, with the society more closely, higher education institute, which might be think as a challenge at this moment, can be transformed into a strength. So with this, I will conclude. So I have been left with 1 minute's time, 1 minute time. Maybe we can extend whatever queries, observations you are having, you can share. Please. So any observations by anyone? Baby madam, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Any observation from you, ma'am?
Uh, so actually, I'm from a very small, like, place, big boy. Um, and the students that we get in our college, they are most of the students are from economically, backward, kind of families. So the NEP that has been introduced now to them, I mean, it's creating a lot of confusion among the students, and um, regarding the subject selections and regarding what the structure is all about. And frankly speaking, or honestly speaking, actually, we are also not really very kind of clear about the whole thing. And the syllabus, for example, the AEC that has been introduced in the first sem, which has the MIL, like the modern Indian language. And the students come with the expectation that they would be getting something else to do it apart from that, the subjects that are being given. For example, Hindi, Bengali, Nepali, and Assamese. These are the only options that are left to them. And most of the students are having a problem in deciding what to take, because obviously Assamese being the first language, or English was there, and then Hindi also was there till maybe class 8. But then after that, they have lost contact or lost touch with the subject for 4 years, because in the meantime they have been doing 11 and 12, where they were maybe taking alternative English, and then suddenly they are left with the choice of selecting one of the subjects which they have not really kind of been in touch for the last 3 or 4 years. So there are certain things, like, again, as far as the value added courses are concerned, um, those courses are also, for example, in the second sem we have yoga. While conducting the classes, I was given the responsibility, because I am the coordinator of the yoga center in the college. But then um, when it comes to teaching students and giving lectures on a subject that I'm not really, maybe theoretically I'm not an expert, maybe maybe as far as the practical side is concerned, I'm okay with that. So when it comes to kind of uh, taking classes, um, it becomes a problem. So we have this one instructor who took the classes, but then he was not I mean, as far as the degrees are concerned, he is not maybe a graduate, but then he is well versed in yoga. These are certain things that challenges, in fact, um, that
Absolutely,
we
ma'am.
are facing. And then also, the classroom situation also, like the infrastructure is not up to the kind of expectations, maybe. We, the classrooms are small, and we are being being asked to take students like maybe 50, 60 students in the major class, but then the classrooms are not well equipped to take that many number of students. So there are so many things that come into play here.
Absolutely, ma'am. It's
S-
a very realistic situation,
yeah,
and
that is the reality, in fact. So even though
yeah,
an NEP has been, it's a, I mean, theoretically it looks
uh,
very good,
uh,
but then in practically, if you really look at it, I mean, there are so many challenges with that we need to overcome. Maybe only then it will become a reality, and maybe it will become a success.
no, you are absolutely true, madam, because we have a very like it's a geographical continuity to the area where I am staying, that is North Bengal University. And so just if I use Dhubri, then I'm reaching to Assam. And say, for example, you will be having an understanding that a place called Kamakhaguri, and thereafter it reaches to us. So we have a similar kind of people and geography that we are confronting. And it's absolutely true, madam, what you share. So it's very easy to say, I told you that way I painted the whole story, the narratives rather. And the reality is something different. And especially the constraints are too many. And how those constraints will be taken care of is possibly it will take time. It will take time. It cannot be done overnight. Maybe some of the aspects would be, especially most of the institutions, those who are not a very premier institute, either it's a government or private, others, they're really struggling hard to eat these combinations, especially that kind of interdisciplinary courses we talk about, and to have that as it's fine, really it's become challenging. And even in the university level, I have observed, or even the colleges, even the number of student intake is actually on the decline. So a lot of seats are lying vacant, even if you are trying to diversify the things. So it's very easier to say, but difficult to do. So that cannot be ignored or shouldn't be ignored. And as you shared, madam, yes, certainly I also learned some kind of a reality check that I got at Italy. Thank you very much, ma'am, to speak at length. Thank you very much, baby madam. So, other than baby madam, is anyone else would like to? May I ask? Somrita, De, would you like to say anything? Your experiences? Somrita, De,
No,
are you here?
no, no question, sir. I really loved your lecture. No question, sir. Thank you
No,
so
you
much.
can share your observations also, not necessarily you have to
I
ask.
think the observation is pretty much similar. The students we deal with, they come from really economically underprivileged background, and that is, I feel, is a very difficult situation to deal with. The kind of students, they are finding it really difficult to grapple with the entire thing, NEP. They are failing
Absolutely.
to understand the
Absolutely.
so I think this is the scenario.
And basically, when we talk about this diversity and inclusiveness, no, whenever I talk about on that particular issue, rather I more deal with the exclusion things, because possibly we are not kind of situations that we find it very inclusive. Rather, the various layers of exclusion, uh, which is maybe a lot of social factors as well as the economic factors, cultural factors, taking all these things together, we find that exclusion is much more a strong reality than inclusion. That is a reality. We cannot ignore that one. Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Shomrita madam, for I hope that you must be getting tired. Before I call it a day, with kind permission from UGC MMTTC Aligarh Muslim University, anyone else would like to say anything, or else I will really thank all of you for listening to me, and I will also thank the UGC MMTTC Aligarh Muslim University for giving me an opportunity to spend 1.5 hours discussing the NMP. Thank you very much of you.